Welcome to Second Listen Saturday on the Parenting Roundabout podcast, where we share some fun moments from a past episode for your weekend listening pleasure. Look for new episodes every Monday through Friday.
Last week, we had a little sidebar discussion about whether or not Nicole should drop off some forgotten homework. And she never actually revealed what she did. But it got us thinking about that parenting dance of like, do you or don't you? Especially, I think now that our kids are getting older, it's trickier. You know, when do you step in to help or solve a problem, or like force feed them breakfast, or when do you or should you hold back and let them handle things on their own, even if they might not do such a good job? So, Terry, I know this is something you've been thinking about.
Yeah. One of the inspirations for this topic this week was something that happened last week. My son just started a new job, and they had called him in to come work for one day, and they had said it would be like 4 to 6 hours. And, 4 hours passed, and I thought, well, that's great. Yay, they're keeping him there for 4 hours. And then 6 hours passed, and I thought, wow, he must be doing really good. And then 7 hours came, and I'm like, well, what if he told them he was going to walk home and now he's in a ditch? So, and I'm thinking, I know that calling there is the wrong thing to do. Every instinct in my body says calling him is calling the place he works is the wrong thing to do. I was going to text him. My daughter said, do not text him. Do not text him. He will let you know when to come pick him up. Leave him alone. And every fiber in my being said that was correct. And yet it was so difficult not to do something, not to step in, so I finally did text and then was ashamed. And, and he called at like 7.5 hours. So, and it was fine and everything was great. And I had panicked for nothing, but you shouldn't interfere. You shouldn't step in. And yet, as a parent, it's so hard not to. It's so hard to behave and not do that thing. Even when my kids were in college, I knew I shouldn't talk to the college professor. I knew I couldn't do that. That was not appropriate. So many times I wrote an email and sat there with my finger on the send button for a long period of time before deleting it. We've talked before about fighting your battles, but it's not, choosing your battles or fighting your kids' battles, but it's not even that. It's just knowing when to allow your kid to fail or knowing when to let them handle something, even though they wouldn't handle it the way that you did. And as, a parent who went through many years of special education advocacy, it's particularly difficult because I am very accustomed to going in and fixing things and talking to that teacher and talking to that therapist and calling a meeting and saying, this situation is not right. Let's fix it. And that's just been my mode of operation for, 12, 14 years. And then to just, step back from that is really difficult. I'm not good at it. I have not mastered this at all. I am definitely the one bringing the homework and, doing all of that stuff, even though I know it's not good. Kids do need to learn how to handle things. And they need to be taught how to handle things. And I have not done that. So now.
Well, I think that's part of it, right? Like, teaching them how maybe it involves predicting a lot of stuff that you like you didn't know that maybe you should have told him, hey, if you're there longer than 6 hours, just shoot me a text.
Right.
So I know that.
But then I also know that, you're not supposed, he's gotten in trouble at other jobs for texting me. Right. So it's like, even that is like, I just need to have faith. I just need to hit the floor and say some Hail Marys and let it stop at that, which I did, by the way.
And it worked.
Yeah. And it worked. There you go. I've counted on that as my coping strategy quite a lot.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. I think my kids are at an age now, well, my younger one is 11. So there's a lot of like, when do you leave them home alone? Yeah. And, do you, like yesterday, he was riding his bike to school and coming home on his own because I had to take his sister to the orthodontist. And, I said, well, you can ride your bike to and from school, or you can be dragged to the orthodontist. And so he chose riding his bike and letting himself in. And, but earlier in the day, I thought, okay, and then I'll leave him a note that says, get yourself something to eat, because I knew that then we would be going to his soccer game soon after I got home. But in the end, I made him a plate because I wanted him to eat what I wanted him to eat, not what he would pick out, whatever. So I made him a plate and put it in the fridge, and sure enough, he ate it. And I would never do that for my older one. And I don't know if it's just her or if it's just I'm babying the other one because he's the baby, So
that's hard. I know. I've recently had the experience of having to leave my kids home alone, and they're older. They're absolutely old enough to be home alone if everything goes according to routine. Right. This is the thing. It's like but what if somebody comes to the door who I would know not to open the door for? Or what if, there's a fire? What if, of course, all the things that you imagine as a parent. Sure. What if this happened? What if that happened? Have I told them what to do about this thing? What if they smell gas? Do they know what to do? If it's just another boring afternoon at home, there's absolutely no problem. So it's I've often proudly proclaimed myself a helicopter parent. It's hard to ground that thing. Nicole, how are you handling this? You're a teacher. Have you learned how to teach your kids how to be independent?
Well,
you have one of them who is at this point, right?
I do, yeah. So one of them, my oldest one, is off and away and living in his own apartment and going to university. So he's doing okay. He still needs, support. But my daughter, I was just thinking as Catherine was saying, do I pay attention to her more because of personality and her nature, or is it because she's the youngest one and I baby her? She just operates totally different to how I do, and I find it really stressful. And so a lot of times I jump in predicting or anticipating the worst.
Oh, yeah.
So and so I think I do that more than what I did that with my son, because my son, I just kind of trusted him to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. To work it out. My daughter, not so much. So last week, I did not take the homework to her. Instead, we had a conversation about how she could remedy the situation at that time, and then, do what she needed to do when she got home. So she ended up, doing, I guess she had to collect some work from somebody and then find a folder, and then because she had to hand in this booklet, so she pulled it together herself at school and handed it in. And
good. Well, good.
She was missing some parts, and she'd add them in the morning. So anyway, I thought that was kind of successful. And right now, and once again, we are in a similar situation. So it's like the weekly, Mom, can you please bring me this? So today she's forgotten her inhaler.
That's
a health issue. So I have to go out and, I will go out and bring her inhaler. But
y'all need like a checklist or something.
Well, and we usually, we operate from a checklist most mornings. Even when I get in the truck, I'm, do you have, like one day she forgot her shoes. Forget your shoes. We pulled up to the curb in front of the school, and she looked down and she goes, uh-oh. So we go through the whole list while we're sitting in the truck where we've been back out of the driveway. And I guess I left off inhaler on the list this morning.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
I don't know. I worry about her future.
Well, and it's funny because I said that I wouldn't, I wouldn't like put out a snack for my older one, but yet she's the one who can't find her way from like one school to another that's 4 blocks apart, or she's flighty about some things. Like she cannot cannot manage to leave a room without leaving the light on, ever, ever.
That's a given.
But yet, you know, but other things, she's totally like, I don't worry about if I ask her if she has homework and she says no, then I believe it, you know. Whereas the other one is the one who's gonna say, "Oh yeah," you know, like 10 p.m. So it's interesting, you know, the things that one can handle that the other can't, and vice versa.
Nicole, sounds like you need to have like a bag in your car of all the potential things she could have forgotten. Like a really ugly pair of shoes, so if she forgets her shoes, she has to wear those to school, and an old inhaler, and you know, whatever. The current homework you can't help, but other things, whenever she forgets something, put a spare in the car.
That's how my one of mine stopped having potty accidents at school, because he or she did not care for the like lost and found underwear they get to wear after they if they needed it. Like, I am never wearing that underwear again. So it was some character that was too babyish or something. I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, good, but please feel free to use the toilet, and then you won't have to wear that underwear ever again.
The power of shame.
Yep, it worked.
Wear my shoes because I said I am not going back.
Oh, you gave her your shoes.
That was a good idea, actually.
I gave her my sandals, and she was mortified. So she hasn't forgotten her shoes since.
Oh, that's wonderful.
They were an old, beaten-up pair of Birkenstocks. They were actually probably kind of cool, but
yeah,
she was.
Oh,
she was not impressed by that initially.
I think that's a victory.
Yes, this is how we teach children.
The homework one was a really good like life skill of, you know, thinking on your feet and figuring out how to figure out an alternative. Yeah. And then the other one was the shame one, which we all know is effective also.
Actually,
absolutely. Public shaming.
Well, how about, is there a time that Terry or either one of you that you did step in and later you're like, well, it's a good thing I did. And it reinforced your helicopter ways?
Man. So many times. I think. When they were younger. But it's also what I find, one of the reasons I always worry about getting involved, and I often regret it, is that so often you don't actually know what the whole story is. And so you go in there based on your understanding, and it turns out that it was something else. You know, so I had a time when, you know, a boy was pushing one of my kids, and it seemed like a really clear-cut case of bullying. But once I got to know more about it, it became clear that my kid was not respecting personal space. And so this kid was just reacting out of his own particular, you know, sensory profile. And so if I had known, I would have handled it differently. As it was, I think I just made things worse for that kid. And, you know, there's been other times, certainly when my kids were in college, where I would barge in and tell them to do something, and then it turned out that I completely misunderstood what needed to happen, and I had made it worse. So that happens a lot, and that's the problem with trying to handle things for your kids, is that since you're not actually there, you're having to interpret situations based on what you're hearing from them, and sometimes deliberately and sometimes just through lack of understanding, the picture that they paint is not always accurate. You know, so you help with the homework thinking that this assignment had such a short deadline. How could the teacher do that? And then you find out that they had 3 weeks, or you know, that happens to me a lot, that sort of thing. But, you know, there's also been times, as I mentioned, with special education advocacy, where you just have to go in there and make it right. And if you hadn't, bad things would happen or continue to happen. Right. So that's always in the back of my mind also, that what if there was a way for me to fix this and I didn't because no one else is gonna, and then my kid becomes a victim.
It's so tricky.
One of the reasons I don't sleep at night. Nicole, was there a time where you intervened and were glad that you had been a pushy, overbearing helicopter parent?
Yeah, like last week when we found out that my son's scholarship didn't come.
Oh, yeah. What happened with that? Were you able to fix that?
Not really, but because I followed up on what my son had told me. If I had just left it there, things would have been far worse. We wouldn't have any chance to appeal. But so I followed up and looked into it. So now we have a whole process that we can go through to appeal, and hopefully he'll get it back. And yeah, I find I step in a lot with him when it comes to.
Well, it sounds, I mean, I think that sounds like an example of where you needed to. I mean, if he was just going to be like, oh, well, I guess it's gone, then, you'd be like, hold up.
So I think I when it comes to, I think I step in with for different reasons with both kids. So for my son, it's more like executive functioning type stuff.
Yeah.
So I step in, to make sure he's planned properly. He has enough money. He's paid his bills, that kind of stuff. And then my daughter is more like, day to day. Do I have to choose? She seems to be able to handle the assignment that's like 3 weeks out, but she can't handle it.
She can't wear shoes.
Wow. There's got to be some strategies for that. That's a problem. And that's a long way to go every day to rescue.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just talking about times where did have a successful experience of independence. I am really proud of myself that my son has another job where he works doing custodial work at a big football arena near us. And basically, we drive him into this place, drop him off. He walks into this huge arena. He spends like 8 hours there. And then afterwards, he makes his way back out to us at the car, which I still, after more than a year of him doing it successfully, cannot believe we let him do. Because it seems so unlike me to, we really had a lot of soul searching about it when he first got the job. And the first day when we dropped him off, I mean, I think my husband really did not approve, and I was just sure I was never going to see him again. Said Hail Marys all the way home in the car. But you know what? He goes in there, he does his job, he comes out in one piece, he finds us in this whole crowd of tailgaters and people getting rides and traffic leaving the stadium. It's amazing to me every time, but I'm really proud of him, and I'm really proud of us for just saying, you know what, this seems extremely there's lots of danger signals going off, and yet he does it, and it's successful. And, so sometimes sitting on your hands and just saying, let's hope for the best here. Sometimes it does work out. Saying your Hail Marys. I highly recommend this, whether you're Catholic or not. You know what? It's very comforting. Find yourself a rosary. It passes a lot of worry time. You can play with
it's a nice short prayer.
It is. And you can say it over and over. It has a comforting sort of meditative quality to it when you're really trying to get yourself to not freak out and go intervene. And you feel like you're doing something. At least I do. Mary is very understanding.
She is a mother after all.
Right.